Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on the weTHRIVE podcast, where we share stories from entrepreneurs around the world about how they're creating an impactful legacy. I'm your host, Casey Clark, and I'm also the founder and chief growth officer of C. Clark Consulting. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Druh Beeharilal.
Well done.
Awesome. And he is a leadership, identity, and business coach with Nayan Leadership. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Casey. I appreciate it. Thanks for hosting this. This is a great podcast you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a leadership, identity, and business coach. And what does that all mean? So leadership coaches obviously are people that help leaders to build self-awareness and understand themselves a little better so they can be better leaders to others. I work in, depending on what kind of context I work in basically the world where you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's bringing self-awareness, helping people to develop skills and habits that create self-awareness for them over time, whether I'm working with them or not. And the identity piece of it is really the fascinating, fun part for me, which is really identifying who you are at your core versus who you are to the world and how you let the world interact with you. And that's the piece that I'm kind of fleshing out in terms of that. And so it's a lot of fun doing that kind of work. And on the business side, I love working with small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, I work with businesses of all kinds, all sizes and shapes, anywhere up to 100,000 employees. But the fun stuff for me is really the small businesses, medium businesses, because those are the ones that are really agile and are really able to turn on a dime and really be creative about what their solutions are, how they want to build, how they want to grow. And that they can create their own place in the market, which is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you get into coaching?
I kind of fell into it, honestly. I'm a recovering attorney. So I was an attorney for a period of time up in Boston. I'm from DC originally, born and raised, and then I went to Boston for law school. I went to Suffolk University Law School. I was an attorney for about almost just under a year, essentially. And then moved back to DC. I did not pass the bar in Maryland. Moved back here to be closer to family. And so I didn't pass the bar here, so I decided to do IT, mostly because I'm Indian. That's kind of how we roll. It's either doctor or IT, and I wasn't gonna go to med school, so I figured why not do IT. So I became a project manager, was doing that kind of work. And in the process of doing that, I wanted to do a lot of work on myself to be a good project manager, to be good for my team, to be good for my organization, and to really help my clients and really help them grow. In the course of doing that, I'm doing a lot of self-reflection, a lot of learning. I came across a couple different folks in the coaching space, and they informed me that I was doing coaching for a long time without even knowing what I was doing. I wasn't pure coaching, but I was helping, even in law school, I was helping the younger students to acclimate to law school, to make the transition properly, and to help them start building interview skills and stuff like that, and really be better for getting jobs or, making the resumes better. And so that awareness really for me helped me kind of propel myself towards coaching more. I actually started out officially in dating coaching, believe it or not.
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, and so I was doing a lot of dating coaching for primarily for IT professionals, because there's a stereotype for a reason. And any folks who dedicate themselves to school or to a high level of performance in school for a long period of time, they tend to sacrifice other parts of their lives, right? And social is one of those parts. So I was trying to help those people to build some more social skills and be more confident in who they are, which translates not just to dating or anything like that, but to all relationships that they have, whether it's work, family, or whatever. And so then that moved into professional development coaching, because networking and dating are exactly the same thing, except one, you're building attraction, the other one, you're just building trust. And so translate that skill that way. And then the leadership side of things came when I was talking to, I started doing that on my own, but I wasn't marketing myself as a leadership coach yet. I met a friend of a friend, and he and I were using a lot of the same terminology. I was like, "What do you do for a living?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm a leadership executive coach." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I'm trying to get into that, actually." He's like, "Oh, if you're trying to do that, you got to get certified. That's the best way to do it." So, I'm like, "Oh, cool. Where'd you get certified?" He's like, "Well, I went to Georgetown." I'm like, "Okay, cool. How's the program there?" He's like, "It's one of the best programs in the world. If you can get in, definitely go to Georgetown." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I applied, got in. Thankfully I got in there, and it was an amazing program. I got certified by them as a leadership coach, and I've been doing that since then. The business side of things, I've been an entrepreneur ever since I can remember. So it's all the stuff that I've learned over the years, plus the coaching parts of things, which combined makes for a pretty fun and creative experience. So
Yeah.
that's the long-winded version of how I am where I am right now. So
I love that though, because it sounds to me like work probably doesn't feel like work for you.
No, it doesn't. Let me back up. It does and it doesn't. It doesn't feel like work because I love what I do and I really feel like I'm definitely helping people. I love the work that I do. On the flip side of things, it can become, it can be taxing. There was actually, I think it was last week. I unfortunately, I scheduled two clients too close together, like three different clients that were very close together time wise, and each one of them ran over by just enough time to not give me time to reset between clients. And they were extremely emotional, like not in a bad way, but it's like very like deep. They were deep sessions, right? And they involved a lot of energy, a lot of like deep heart work. And it was actually very interesting because two of the clients that they were prospective clients actually, they had the exact same issue.
Oh, wow.
Exact same issue, but they were completely different places in life and completely different situations. One was a 22-year-old girl who's going through med school right now and having a lot of trouble with imposter syndrome. Another was a 47-year-old woman who's thinking about trying to start her own business and having imposter syndrome about that. And it's like, here are these two women who are in completely different places in life, completely different backgrounds, completely different people, obviously, and they're having struggling with the exact same issues, right?
Yeah.
And it was just, but it was again very deep hard work. And I, after those two conversations, I had another conversation with someone that it wasn't a coaching session, it was just a networking one-to-one, but that also got very deep. And so after that I was like, oh, my brain and my heart are totally fried right now. I got to do nothing for the rest of the night. I got to just like watch mindless TV or something, like I was just exhausted, but in the best way, but
Yeah.
it can be taxing, I will say that.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I have the same thing. Like, I'm like, what am I doing booking all these meetings like that require my brain? And then I'm like, okay, just I want to veg out on the couch. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, self-care is definitely underrated nowadays.
you got that right. Absolutely. So, speaking of self-care and how you're helping other people, what does thriving mean to you, and how are you making sure that you're thriving?
So I think everyone has their own definition of thriving. My personal definition for me is being able to, when the world's not on lockdown, being able to travel and explore the world and go on adventures with my dog. And that's without having to worry about money, right? That's thriving to me, is really being able to freely explore and do things and spend money on people I care about and myself and my dog, obviously. I mentioned my dog a lot in case people didn't notice, but yeah, no, I just I love experiences, right? There was a time in my life where I loved things, and I still love some things. Like there's still physical things that I still enjoy. I'm a huge nerd, so I like to collect random comic books and that kind of thing here and there. But I've kind of, for the most part, let go of that over the years, and I really value experiences more than I value things anymore. And so, like, I'll spend a lot more time and money on experiences than I will on a thing, right? Because that thing can get destroyed, but that memory is never going to go away. And I've come to value time infinitely more than I value money over time. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, this as well as I do, that time is people say time is money. Time is so much more valuable than money. You can always make another dollar. You can never make another minute.
Yeah.
Right. So I think for me, thriving is making the most of every minute that I have and being able to not look back and say, damn, I wish I'd done that, or I should have done this with that time, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to regret anything in my life,
Yeah. So, as you have grown to that point in your life, what are some obstacles that you faced that kind of prohibited you from thriving?
How much time do we have for this again?
Let's keep
um,
it short-winded.
I'll do the top three. The top, and one has definitely been my personal limiting beliefs, right? About myself, about who I was meant to be and who I'm supposed to be, to make other people happy, essentially. Being a coach is not anything anyone grows up aspiring to be, so I never, as a kid, I never thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be a leadership coach or a business coach. Yeah, I wanted to, no, I actually wanted to be a paleontologist when I was a kid because I love dinosaurs. But then at a certain point when I kind of grew up mentally, I wanted to be a lawyer. And I had this grand plan of how I was going to be a lawyer, and that didn't happen, obviously. But learning to roll with the punches, I think, is one thing that I've learned over the years, and that's been an obstacle, is getting to the point where I'm okay with things. And again, I'm not like perfect right now, obviously. I'm very, very, very far from being perfect, but I think I'm better at rolling the punches than I used to be. Coming to the realization that things happen for a reason is one big thing that's helped me deal with my own limiting beliefs and of why things happen. The other thing is obviously, I mean, I think a lot of us struggle with this sometimes, is imposter syndrome. You know, when I first made the transition from being an attorney to being an IT professional, I had severe imposter syndrome. That's why I went after every possible training and professional development experience I could, right, at the time, to try to get myself through that. And it's not an intellectual thing, right? It's not until you dive into the psychology of it you realize it's not an intellectual thing. You know intellectually that you are this thing that you are, right? Whether it's a doctor, lawyer, IT professional, coach, whatever. But intellectually is not what you're trying to fix. It's the internal part of it. It's the identity piece of it, that your internal identity is not aligned with your external identity, right? And then you got what I call the shadow, what Carl Jung calls the shadow, which is always in the back of your head, kind of trying to protect you, but it has no idea how to do that properly. So it ends up holding you back.
Right.
So, and then the third thing I'd say is probably just financial things, obviously, over the years, right? It's like being able to spend the money I need to spend to build a successful business, and being able to plan that out properly so that I'm not going into severe, significant debt to do so.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. So having, like yourself, many businesses that you've done, it's hard to fuel those yourself and, still stay on task. So I can definitely relate. So what are some resources that you've used when you've been overcoming like imposter syndrome or your own limiting beliefs?
One is friends and family, as much as you can. I mean, there's a point where, and this is where you have to be more selective about people in your life and who you choose to confide in, because some people will not intentionally, but they will. Some people will tend to hold you back, right? They'll be like, because we all have our own paradigm of the world, the way we see the world, or our perspectives. And if your way of doing things doesn't fit into their paradigm, then they're going to be like, well, you should be doing things this way. This is the way that I do things. So and this is the right way, right? Everyone has the right way of doing things. And if you're not doing things their way, then they're trying to make you fit into that. So for the most part, being selective about people like that, like the people in my life that I trust and that I've confided in over the years. But I think generally, I mean, it's really just seeking out new folks, new communities to be part of, and diverse communities. And I don't mean that just racially. I mean in terms of experiences. Like the entrepreneur community is something that I've jumped into and I've thrived in recently in the last couple of years that I've loved. The coaching community for me has been fantastic as well, and it's really cool because those are communities I was never exposed to as a younger person, right? And then I'd say the third thing is just resources that we overlook oftentimes, like books or not the internet.
Book? No way.
I know, right? Like not social media. How about that? Like let's say not, for the programmers in the audience, the exclamation point social media. It's like
You are a nerd.
yeah, I'm a huge nerd. Huge nerd. But no, it's like there's Audible, there's all kinds of resources, the things that can just open your mind to different concepts, right? Different concepts that may not fit into your current paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So that being able to expand your universe, expand your thought process, and being open to new information that may change the way you see the world, that's okay. You don't have to like lock into this. I have to see the world a certain way, and I'm going to fight everyone who doesn't fit into my current way of seeing things.
So what's your favorite book?
My favorite book of all time? It's a good question. So there's on the nonfiction side of things, I'll start with that. I really love the Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That's one of my favorite ones for sure, because it's a great book. And the other one I'd probably say is I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is by Ramit Sethi, and it's a really interesting way to think about money. So that's a really good one. Those are my two probably nonfiction favorites. Fiction, like novels, I think the Night Angel trilogy by Brent Weeks is really awesome. Really well done. I actually wrote a novel myself that I was kind of partially inspired by that a little bit, but that's not one of my favorites, but that book, that trilogy is really well written. It's entertaining. It keeps you entertained from start to finish, and it's just fantastic. But the close second is Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. Those two books. The movies were horrible, by the way, just horrible. They made a movie off Ready Player One. It was not good. The book was fantastic. Even if you're not a nerd, you should check out the book when you get a chance. It's actually really good, very entertaining.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that, as of right now, I only read nonfiction books, and it's funny. Like people make fun of me because they'll reference a movie, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you say like a word that reminds me of a song, I'll start singing the song because I just love music, but I'll have to check that out. I need to get into some things that aren't so serious sometimes. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I try to diversify as much as I can, but there are times when I'm doing nothing but right now I'm on a nonfiction kick. So I'm listening to a lot of nonfiction. But on the way back, when I was driving 42 hours from Vegas to here, I tended to go towards fiction because it's more entertaining and keeps me awake.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
can
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
Definitely. So talk to us a little bit about legacy. I think, with you talking about having been a dating coach, like I think of, wow, like, does he have this fantastic love story that led him to that? But obviously it was the IT world. So, when you think of legacy, you kind of think about like family and friends and just what you want people who come across you to think about, when they think of you. So what does that term bring up for you?
So for me, legacy is a pretty deep word. So my company is called Nayan Leadership, right? I named it after my nephew. So my nephew, I actually named my nephew. His name is Nayan, obviously. And Nayan means eyes, which means it's like the more you see, the more you can do. That's the whole idea with Nayan Leadership. If you can't see something, you're not aware of something, you can't do anything to change it,
Yeah.
right? So that's where I got the name from. I named it after my nephew. So that's kind of like, I don't have kids of my own, obviously, and I'm divorced. I got divorced a couple years ago, and so
There
for
goes the
me,
love story.
huh?
I said, there goes the love story.
No, it's actually we're still friends, but our marriage ruined our friendship basically. So we realized we should not have gotten married when we did, and so it's one of those things where you make certain choices and then you just own up to them, like, okay, that was not a right choice for me in the moment, but it is what it is. But no, that there are definitely love stories that are longer conversations, but for another day. But for me, I think that for me, legacy means just leaving the world better than I left, than I came into it, right? And that seems less and less likely every day as of 2020, but hopefully we'll be a little better off at this point. We do the best we can, right?
Yeah.
The quote I always remember is, everything you do will be insignificant, but it's very important you do it. And I think that's telling of every person on the planet, right? Because all together, we individually, like, if I choose to eat lunch at 1 p.m. versus 1:30, doesn't really make a difference to the world that much, right? But if you look at it on a macro level, you look at like what I'm able to do between those 30 minutes, what the butterfly effect thing, basically, right? Where it's like you take those 30 minutes and you delay things by 30 minutes. If you delayed the whole world by 30 minutes, what would happen,
Wow,
right?
that's a great way to look at it.
Like, yeah, it's craziness. And when you think about how much little things impact things, because it's not the thing itself. It's that other poem with the for want of a nail, the horse was not shoed. For want of a shoe, the horse did not. You ever heard of that poem? It's a really cool poem. It's like, for want of a nail, the shoe was not put on the horse. For one of, I can't remember the exact name. I'm butchering it like crazy. But for one of a horse, the rider couldn't deliver the message. For one of a message, the battle was lost. For the battle being lost, the war was lost. Right, all because of one nail. Right, and it's like it's the impact of things down the line, not so much a thing in the moment. So it's just, I think it's an interesting way to think about it.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
No, yeah, I'll send you the actual non-butchered version of of the poem when I find it. But
Well, it's still powerful butchered. So I
thank you.
appreciate that.
Thanks. And to the listeners, I apologize for butchering it that badly. For those of you who know the poem, it's much more beautiful when it's written, actually. But
Awesome. So, what nuggets do you have for anyone who is just trying to figure out, what their legacy is, or who's just simply trying to thrive in life?
two things. One is it's something I've taken from Ramit Sethi, which is the guy who wrote that I will teach you to be rich, that book. One policy he mentions in that book that he has for himself, that I've started to adopt, is I don't care what my situation is financially, whatever. If it's a book that I want to buy, I will buy it, because it's something that's going to better me as a person, right? And I think that can be taken to an extreme. I wouldn't say go to the extreme with that, because there's some expensive self-development programs out there. But if there's a way to invest in yourself and in your own self-awareness and in your growth, and you can make it work, even if it's a little bit of a stretch, it will pay dividends over time, right? Because remember, you can always make more money. You can't make more time.
Right.
So making the most of the time we have on this earth, we don't know how much we have, each of us. So being able to invest in ourselves and do what we can to better ourselves, whether that's even in, I'm not talking about coaching. Coaching is fantastic. It's a great way to do that, to build the self-awareness and build habits and work with someone on a one-to-one basis to do that, or in group setting as well. Group coaching is also available. But even if you're not able to necessarily afford that in the moment, reading books is underrated, severely underrated. Get off of social media, start, read some stuff that expands your mind, right? Read some stuff that intentionally disagrees with your views, just to better understand the other side of things. I'm not saying you need to necessarily indoctrinate yourself with stuff that's wrong or doesn't agree with you, but just understand where other people are coming from, right? Understand that I do a lot of movie references, as you know, from knowing me for the last year or so, and TV references. And one of the lines I love from Cobra Kai, which is the TV sequel to Karate Kid, is there's no good and evil in the world, right? There's what he says is everyone thinks that they're the hero and everyone thinks that you're the villain, right? It's all about perspective. And what he says is there's strong and there's weak. I'll change it to say, basically, instead of strong and weak, there's selfish and selfless, right? Or selfish people and people who are not selfish. So what you can do is understand what people's point of view is. Why do they think that they're the hero and you're the villain, when the opposite might be true, or neither might be true?
Yeah. So the book that keeps coming to mind, and I'd love to know if you've read it, is My Grandmother's Hands.
I've heard of it. I've not read it, but I've heard of it.
Oh, you have to. It is such an eye-opening book about perspective. So yeah, it's awesome. And I'm reading a lot right now about trauma and how that affects how we show up for other people. And
absolutely,
you and I could probably have like conversations for days about that stuff. But yeah. So any other nuggets that you have?
I think, taking a step back, I think from everything, just if you're listening to this and you have people in your life who are younger people, like in their teens or in their early 20s, help them to not put the pressure on themselves as much as they can, because there's a lot of pressure on young people in our society right now to figure out your entire life when you're freaking 19. You know what I mean? And I'm 36 and I haven't figured out my life yet. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you feel about this, Casey, but I feel like there's so much pressure to say, okay, you got to pick a major, you got to chart your career path. You got to start networking now, and you don't know how to network. By the way, no one's taught you how to network. No one's taught you what the difference between a debit and credit card is, right?
How to budget or anything like that.
No one's taught you how to budget. No one's taught you what a budget actually is. No one's taught you how to build credit, right? Or the fact that credit exists. No one's taught you the basic life skills. Oh yeah, by the way, that thing called taxes you got to worry about. No one's taught you anything about that either. So we have these expectations that we're putting on these kids when they don't know enough about the world to have expectations of themselves. Right? It's like me telling you, hey, Casey, by the way, listen, so I need to get that report from you by 5 p.m. today. And you're like, what report? What are you talking about? I'm like, 5 p.m. is cool, right? Cool. And you're like, what are you talking about? Exactly. Good. Yeah, we're good to go. All right. I'll see you. I'll talk to you at 5. And you're like, what are you talking about? That's the same idea, because you have zero information about what you need to do.
Right.
So that's one thing I would say. So if there are young people in your life, encourage them to start reading more or doing things to have conversations that are deeper than their age. People can call it that, but it's really just, do what you can to try to take the burden off.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. I have a soft spot for impacting, people that are younger who know that there can be something better, but like you're saying, they have no clue. So
yeah. And the other thing I would say is also unrelated. Donate to dog rescues, because I love dogs. But they need help really badly, and dogs are amazing. Dogs are better than people, frankly. So
I could agree with that, except typically people don't make me sneeze and break out in hives. So I personally
that's not the dog's fault. If they knew they were doing that, they would stop. I guarantee you.
They probably would.
Well, no one will love you unconditionally like a dog.
So my boyfriend rescued a cat I have to share, and I don't care that he makes me sneeze. I will snuggle that cat all day long. I just think that he's the best thing ever. So yeah, I think
animals are amazing. Yeah, dogs and cats both. I mean, I used to be a cat person when I was a kid, but then the more I got exposed to dogs, the more I realized that dogs are like cats, except more dependent and more loving. Cats are kind of like they love you on their schedule.
Yeah.
Like,
I like cats because they're more independent, but I mean, dogs, like, I just don't like to take care of other people or animals, but that's a whole different topic. But I mean, with dogs, it's like that unconditional love. Like they're gonna, be there and just want like all of your attention. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's awesome. So any other things that are top of mind for you that you haven't shared that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Not really. I mean, if you are a person who's like a budding entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, stop aspiring, just do it. Try it out. I'm not saying quit your job and do it, but keep your job going. Test the market. There's no such thing as the market telling you the wrong thing. Test the market with what your ideas are, see what makes sense, talk to different people, start networking about it, and just make it happen if it makes sense. And then talk to different folks in different industries and just network your ass off. And if you don't know how to network, learn how to network. Don't just accept that I have a fixed mindset. I don't know. I'm just not a good networker. It's not true. You're not just anything unless you. Sorry, it is true if you believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have someone I'm sharing. I'm gonna say fast forward this podcast to the specific point. So thank you.
Anytime. And that was not prompted, by the way. She's not slipped me a note or anything like that. I just said that was unprompted.
Awesome. Well, I definitely appreciate your time today, and it's always, great chatting with you, and always full of lots of laughs. So I appreciate everything that you contribute to the world. And I'd also like to thank our music sponsor, Stephen Lamar Moore, who made the music for our podcast. So thank you so much, Druh. It has been a pleasure.
A pleasure's all mine. Thanks so much, Casey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.